More on this, I'm joined by Michael Chertoff. He was the Homeland Security Secretary during George W. Bush's administration. He's now executive chairman and co-founder of the Chertoff Group. Michael, good to talk to you again. Thank you for being with us. And it was really important to talk to you because you were so central to the last time we tried to get to the bottom of why there was an attack on sort of what we hold dear in America. It feels different now. It feels different than it did with that 9/11 commission, which most people will agree was a noble effort and probably led to some important changes, some of which you implemented. What's good about what we're seeing with this January 6th commission, and what worries you?
Well, I think the idea of having a January 6th commission that would be bipartisan is a very good idea. Just like with the 9/11 commission, you want to understand what were the failures that allowed a situation where you could have a violent insurrection at the Capitol, particularly in circumstances where it was pretty obvious there was going to be an assembly of people coming to Washington, many of whom were very ardent Trump supporters and who had very negative attitudes about the election. So getting to the bottom of this and making sure it doesn't happen again is exactly what we need to do, as we did after 9/11. What worries me is that we're in a much more political environment now. I remember after 9/11, everybody came together, Republican, Democrat, all Americans, because we knew we were under attack. We're under attack now. Our values are under attack, but it's a domestic attacker, not a foreign attacker. And that has created a degree of political division, an allergy to the truth, that is, I think, going to make it much more difficult to have this commission.
I want to talk to you about what your successor has done with the National Threat Assessment Bulletin. Yesterday, Alejandro Mayorkas said, with the issuance of today's NTAS bulletin, we're advising the public to be vigilant about ongoing threats to the United States, including those posed by domestic terrorism, grievance-based violence, and those inspired or influenced by foreign terrorists and other malign foreign influences. That's the point you were just making. That is it more complicated that we acknowledge the fact that that's possibly the major threat facing our country right now, that it's grievance-based domestic terrorism?
Well, this has been evident for a few years now. We've seen that actually most of the deaths in the U.S. caused by acts that we would characterize as terrorist have not come from jihadi terrorists overseas, but have come from Americans who are pursuing extremism, particularly right-wing extremism. That doesn't mean that overseas terrorists are not a threat anymore, but it does mean that we've got to look now at home for where the threat is. Now, what complicates it is this. When we collect intelligence on foreign actors who may be terrorists, the law allows us much more flexibility. Domestically, we have to be careful not to tread on the First Amendment and freedom of speech. So we have to be careful to distinguish between political ideas we disagree with and acts that incite or actually further violence. So it's going to be a little tricky to do the intelligence collection here. But the important thing is not only Secretary Mayorkas, but the FBI Director, Chris Wray, and others in the intelligence community have been very clear that this is now the most urgent threat we have to look at in terms of violent terrorism.
You bring up something very important, and people will remember that after 9/11, that was also very important. The idea that you do not tread on civil liberties. In this case, we're talking about the First Amendment, but there were other civil liberties involved in the work, including that you did with the Patriot Act that people were critical of. How do we address that right now when so much of this is argued to be freedom of speech and expression, and others fear that it's actually attacking democracy? That is a very hard line to walk.
It is a hard line to walk, but the key is really to use the phrase incitement as a distinguishing factor. If I express a view on politics in a general sense, that's normally protected by the First Amendment. But if I suggest go out and do something violent or physical, that is incitement, and that's never been protected by the First Amendment. So I think the important thing here is to go carefully and in a measured way, but not to abdicate the responsibility to identify threats. And I will say this, nowadays on social media, many of the people who are most violent advertise what they're going to do. They don't keep it secret. They go, I'm going to go and do something, blow something up or kill somebody. And once you say that, you're no longer in First Amendment territory.
Michael, I want to ask you about this new effort, this new threat to the Republican Party, that either it gets its act together or people like you and others will do something else. What does that look like? What does the do something else look like?
Look, I think we'd like to have the Republican Party return to its roots as a party that cherishes the Constitution, democracy, freedom, and also creates a big tent where people of all different views within reason can come in and be part of the party. It has deviated from this over the last few years, and we've seen a much more hard-edged, ideological, and frankly anti-democratic group within the Republican Party that have taken over. I like to think that most Americans, including a lot of people who are naturally inclined to be Republican in terms of policy, would like to see a return to a party that cherishes our fundamental values, like the Democratic Party should as well. If that doesn't happen, people are going to bail out. And either they'll join the Democratic Party or they'll join an existing party or create a third party. But the important thing is to create a movement and a platform that people can feel part of in order to promote these very significant constitutional values which Americans have fought for and died for since the beginning of the Republic.
Well, if it works, it'll be interesting, because the 13 principles that are laid out are principles that it would be appealing to people across the political spectrum. So we will watch it closely. Michael, good to see you as always. Thanks for taking time to join us. Michael Chertoff is the former Homeland Security Secretary in the George W. Bush administration.